All right, everybody. It's the Jere Metcalf Podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today on the show, we have Dana Trotter with Sotheby's International Realty in the Hamptons. So we get to talk about some really big stuff today. And you've got an awesome story. But Dana, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
So first of all, I have to pause. I'm going to ask you how you got in the business, and it may have something to do with the photograph in the background, but we haven't talked horses much. Like we've talked, but not a lot. You're obviously a horse person as well.
Absolutely. And that was actually I went to school for accounting and business, and I never thought I'd be in real estate. That was not my goal track. And I've been riding horses since I was 5 years old. And that really was what I wanted to do when I sort of finished school. And I realized very quickly that was a very difficult industry to be in, and you're on the road a lot, and it's just not conducive to having a family or settling down. So, and not to mention that at 20 years old, riding 9 horses a day, I was already in pain. So I decided to follow in the footsteps of my family. My stepfather was a builder developer, and my mother has been in real estate she finally retired a couple of years ago, but so she encouraged me to get my license out of college. And I was planning to just help her with kind of the rental season when she was real busy. And I quickly sort of took all of my horse contacts and all of these great people that I had met through that industry and built on it with, real estate is all about your network and your contacts. And that just was it was sort of an easy flow for me.
So your mom was a real estate agent, and then who was it that was a builder and a developer?
My stepfather. So we moved out to the Hamptons in the late 80s, and he was building and selling homes at that point. So I've sort of been around real estate my whole life. I mean, from the construction side and he also then did home inspections. And so I've sort of been in this verse of real estate and just the whole thing, from building a house, to listening to my mother talk about all of her deals. And, it's really been an interesting it's just evolved.
So when you came in, like usually you don't want to do whatever your parents do because you see you see all the bad and you're like, no way. But you still came into real estate. Like, how did that happen?
She used to come home at the end of the day and be just exhausted. And I never really understood, because it's physically okay. You're walking up and down steps and you're going from house to house, and it's physical, but having people in your car and being on all the time it can be exhausting. And you have to be sharp and know your inventory and know your product. And it's a lot to think about. So when I started, I realized, why she was tired at the end of the day.
Exactly. So getting in, we barely talked about this before we started, but just in case everybody didn't catch this, you came in very young. You were 22 years old, and you're still in real estate. And while you look really close to 22, you're not. You're a bit older. You've been in it, 20 years?
I have been with Sotheby's for 25 years. So
wow.
I started at a very small boutique firm, and about 6 months later, it was a firm called Braverman Newbold Brennan. They were very well, thought of. They were very well respected in the community. And about 6 months after I started, Sotheby's bought them out. So Sotheby's is now, been here for 25 years, company-owned office, and I've been with them since, and I've been recruited by every other agency out here over the years. And I feel like I was lucky enough to start with the best. So why fix it if it isn't broken?
We could do like a whole interview on loyalty.
Yeah.
Of course, Sotheby's is not hard.
Yeah,
like Sotheby's is not like, if there's going to be one anybody's going to stay with forever, Sotheby's is pretty much it. But there's still, that's still impressive.
Yeah.
So that's so much to talk about. First of all, you're 22 and you're a real estate agent. Here's my big question for you that I think a lot of people miss, and I remind people of this, but like, you're 22, you've got all the connections. Your mom is a real estate agent. Your stepdad is a developer builder. However, you're 22. So there's two things about that. Not only are you young, but I didn't grow up too hard, but I really didn't know anybody, and nobody in my family like did this for a living. So I had to kind of force my way. So I got to make a lot of mistakes that nobody ever knew about. You're young, so they know you as somebody's kid. You are only 22, and you're probably faced with a lot of huge opportunities, but a lot of big mistakes that could have ruined your career forever.
Yeah. I mean, my mother was also very well respected in the industry. Everybody liked her. She did the right thing. She was not ruthless one of the things I pride myself on is honesty and integrity. And that's something that I've carried through my career. And, I also have a very strong work ethic. I mean, I literally have been working since I was 8 years old. When I was younger, riding horses is a very expensive sport, and my parents did well, but we weren't wealthy, and I wanted to ride. And so from 8 years old, I started working off my lessons so that I could ride in exchange for, working at the barn. At 14, I was co-managing the barn. And then, by the time I was 15, 16, I was working in restaurants. I was going from working all day at the barn to working in restaurants to braiding horses at night for horse shows. I would literally get home at like 3 or 4 in the morning and get up the next day and do it all over again. And I loved it. So I had like a very strong work ethic from day one. And when I went off to school, I loved accounting. I loved like the idea of running my own business and all of that. I mean, the accounting program I went to was very rigorous. And I just realized like halfway through my junior year, I didn't want to be a CPA. I didn't want to sit at a desk all day and crunch numbers.
Yeah.
That's who I was. So I then switched to marketing. So I ended up with a major in marketing and a minor in accounting, which actually has served me well. I feel like it's really helped me throughout my career. And then when I graduated, we were living in the Hamptons. I had a great life. I was, I'm a country girl. I'm not really a city girl. I didn't want to move into New York City and get a real job. And that's when my mother said to me, why don't you and I was actually in the winters, I was riding for a wealthy woman who had wonderful horses, and I was wintering in Palm Beach. So I was riding in the Wellington circuit in the winter and then coming up here in the summer. So I met so many people, and I just, some really interesting, affluent people, and just got, had a great network, and I will tell you, like, when you first get into the business, everyone always says, your friends are the hardest to work for, which is true. But I just had I had so many contacts at that point that it was like I said before, an easy transition for me to sort of start. And then when I was 22 and got my license, so nowadays, I have to say there are a lot of young people in the business, at least out here. But when I got my license, I mean, my colleagues were 40, 50, 60. A lot of them it was their second or third career. It wasn't like real estate wasn't a primary, job. It was like something that people did once they were retired from their real job.
Right. Because you've been doing this longer than me. I can't believe it. I've been almost 20. But I remember I was like, realtor? Like, what? We would never do that. People would even say, you should be a real estate agent. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
And then here I am.
Not was I young, but
you didn't. Yeah.
And I was up against people that were, 20, 30 years my senior. So, but I was so lucky to land in a place with Sotheby's where there were so many great people. And, that's one of the things I love about Sotheby's too, is they only hire people that have, integrity and have
very true.
A certain level of, white glove service. So I've always been lucky enough to be surrounded with great people. And, some of the people in my office I've been working with for 17, 18, 19 years. So, we're like, it's like family. It's like a second family.
Yeah. Well, we forget, like, we real estate agents that are in it for the long haul are in it. We don't go. The clients do come and go. We do represent them. But Latif said this, Latif Hasten, who was on the show a while back, was talking about that. Like, hey, the clients, we might repeat, but the agents, we've got to keep that rapport, because that's actually what serves our clients.
Well, and that's a very good point, because that's another thing I pride myself on is I also, like my mother, am I think very well liked. People, people are, other brokers are happy to work with me on deals and always say, you've been wonderful and thank you. And, I treat everybody the same way. I mean, if you're a top broker, that's great. And if you're not, I'm happy to help you, it's
exactly.
And I've given, it's funny, I was in a bidding war situation last fall that was very intense. And the broker on the other side, the listing agent, was sort of new to the business. He hadn't seen this kind of a market. And I coached him on the bidding war and how to handle it, because he was kind of letting it get out of control with offers and, and then, and I, you know what, I said, you have to go to a sealed bid. I said, it's the only way to get your seller the highest and best number and not upset all of these buyers.
So now we've got, I'd like, okay, now so many more questions, but here's back to 22 getting into the business. And then we're going to graduate into now and the connections you have and working with other agents. 22 years old, you've got all the connections, which can be a good or bad. You transition, you say it's easy, but really, like, how did you, as a 22-year-old, what did your first deal look like? How did you secure it?
So, well, as I mentioned, a lot of what I did in the beginning was rental. The rental season out here is very, lucrative. And so I started out just learning a lot doing rentals. And that was, doing that is so helpful, because it's just the back and forth and the nuances and the, the things that come up and the trying to keep everybody on the same page and happy. And so that was sort of how I started. And then actually, I was saying it's hard to work with friends, but my very first deal was selling a house to a girlfriend of mine. And it was great. It was a fun experience for everybody. She ended up loving that house for many, many years. And, we're still friends today. And, I think she wasn't until she was in her she had owned it for probably 15 years and ended up doing very well with it. It was a great investment house.
Wow.
It was her personal home for a lot of years, and then it turned into a rental house for her. And then she sold it and did very well with it. So that was my very first sale. And then there was actually a really nice couple that I met through spin class, of all things. And they were sort of my first big sale. It was like over $1 million. And, they were friends, but, and I've since sold them like 2 or 3 other houses over the years. So that's another thing is, a lot of my business has been referral based, and a lot of it's repeat, people either upsizing or downsizing over the years. So I'm lucky enough to, have a lot of repeat business.
So here's the nuggets in here, everybody. Number one, you said something really important. You got into the business and you were just doing rentals, but you're in a market where those are common, and you can get in front of them and learn and do them. You probably do a lot more rentals a lot more quickly. So you learned something. You said earlier, you were talking about working with people, and I don't know if you said the word, but it's huge. It's trust. And working with people, from your loyalty to the brokers you're with, it could be like 25 years with the same broker. Mm-hmm. But the rapport you have, which is the other one, trust and rapport, is building trust with other people, learning, number one. In learning, you knew what you were doing, you built trust. Your first deal was with your friend, but your friend trusted you, you built off of that. Then you met more people who then did bigger deals with you. And from that you learned. And then the last thing you did from that was your business grew.
Yeah.
So it's simple. It's learn, build rapport, make sure you're trustworthy. Seth Godin has a great thing on that. It's not about your hits. It's not about going viral. Especially in our business, we don't need that much market share to do really well. The number one agents don't have that much market share,
right,
in the big scheme of things. So that trust and rapport, and grow. So,
and hard work. I mean, you cannot.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get into business thinking, "Oh, it's a 2-week
course, that.
and let me just, take the course and I can just start selling." And they don't realize how much sort of grind goes in, especially up front. It's not and I tell people this. I mean, I have people call me all the time asking me about, the business and should I get into it and what do you think? And I say to them, don't expect to take the course and then, start selling houses tomorrow. Like, you really have to be prepared. And I was also lucky at the time that I didn't have a lot of overhead when I first started in the business. So I was able to, put in the grind and not have to earn X amount to live. I mean, it's to live out in the Hamptons is definitely, expensive rents and that kind of thing. So you have to either have, a cushion, to work off. You can't expect to, and nowadays, which wasn't the case when I got into the business, but nowadays I think the best thing is to start on a team and to really just get with a good team. But
isn't it funny how technology like real estate deal? It's just now we just need more. We need teams and more support to work our technology.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. Like you were talking about that earlier. It's always funny because you see the picture of you on the horse in the background and it's so glamorous, but little do we know, it is such hard work. And then to be in it is ridiculous. It's not like, I love how people are like, yeah, tennis is so expensive or golf is so expensive. I'm like, even the most expensive country club membership doesn't compare to the cost of a horse. It does not.
My husband reminds me every month that we literally have an extra mortgage payment. It's my horse's 12 by 12 stall.
Yeah,
so, yes.
I mean,
but the other thing about growing up riding for me, and this is part of just who I am, and I probably why I loved riding so much, not only is it an individual sport, so it's really on you and the horse and that relationship, but it's also very, like if you enjoy the competing part of it, I'm very competitive. And so, I think that also bleeds over into real estate because I like to win,
And you like to be really good at something.
Yes, absolutely.
That's why you like to win.
Yeah.
Vice versa. But either way, I'm relating here.
Yes.
So it is though, like when you start talking about that work ethic and what you did, I've rode horses too. I'm good at people, I'm like, no, you have no idea. But it also gives you a question. I remember because I grew up in South Georgia where it was not the Hamptons, right? But being in the horse world gives you exposure, just like the being in the Hamptons does, but being in the horse world, I would broader, like what a lot of the world actually lives like.
Mm-hmm.
Did that ever appeal to you or kind of make you go, back to the sitting behind the computer and being a CPA, maybe that's not my only option? Or what was your take?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I saw people that were traveling all over the world and going to, Germany or Belgium to ride. And, I mean, I had unrealistic Olympic goals when I was younger. I was quickly like, you have to have such a backing for that kind of you either have to be incredibly talented or you have to have a financial backer to have those types of horses. So, so when I got to the age where I realized that was an unrealistic goal, I did it on the level that made sense for me. I really enjoyed it. And even to this day, I mean, I took a break from it in my 30s. I was busy working and having kids and just didn't have time for it, but I really missed it. And to this day, I still horse show and I still love it. I don't get to many horse shows. I mean,
wow.
Most of my competition shows every weekend all year long. I go to about 4 or 5 horse shows a year. So I have a little bit of a disadvantage when I show up because I'm not as in it, but I love it. And I have a great horse and I'm lucky and I'm competitive enough.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So into the horses though, the horse in the relationship and being competitive, and then you've got real estate. In real estate as an agent, there are a lot of industries where technology ironically seems to be one of them, where it's a little bit cutthroat. It's a little bit me against you. With the horses, it's you and the horse in it together. With brokers, it's us and the brokers. We're kind of in it together if this is going to work out. What do you like? That's just what I'm hearing. Elaborate on that for us and your success and what you love about the business. And where I might be on or off on that.
I mean, I'm a real people person. So I love working with buyers. I love that process. I love finding buyers their special place. And for most of my buyers, it's a second home, but it makes me so happy. I ran into one of my buyers recently and they closed last fall and they just said they're so happy. They're just really, and they have 3 little kids and they're really enjoying their new home. And it makes me so happy to hear that and to hear that people are that process just worked and we were successful, and then they refer me their friends, which is so nice. As far as other brokers, as I said earlier, I think it's so key and so important to work with a broker that has good relationships in the community. So, be it other brokers, just do the right thing. I mean, I think there's so many people these days that don't do the right thing, which is just shocking to me sometimes, but I think it's really important to going back to the trust and the integrity. I think that's important.
Okay, so in this business I'm going to remind everybody maybe one more time, 25 years. What have you learned over the years, or how has your perspective changed of like being a real estate agent?
I think the biggest thing is you never stop learning. And I think that is in life, but also in real estate. I mean, it's incredible to me that I can be doing this for 25 years and still go, wow, that's interesting. I didn't, but I think the biggest thing in this, what I've realized over the years is how grateful I am. I love what I do. I work hard. I can play hard when I want to. I can make my own schedule. I mean, I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I'm constantly, there's one of our colleagues who we both know well who says he doesn't answer an email after a certain time at night. I am the worst at that. I mean, I answer emails at 11 p.m. and I'm just, because I like to stay on top of everything. But I think the biggest thing is I really appreciate and love what I do. And I'm lucky that I think to have been doing this so long, there's not, they say you change your career every 7 to 10 years, not me.
Yeah.
But I think what's so great about real estate is that no 2 days are alike, right? So you wake up every morning and you could get a phone call that you weren't expecting, and it's a different day. And, you're constantly juggling, and, I'm very good at multitasking. So I think that's what I thrive on that. And actually when I'm busy is when I'm the most productive, when the market's kind of slow, or things are, like our winter season, for example, like typically from December to February, it's pretty quiet. I find I'm not as productive because I like to be just going, that's my personality.
Well, come to Atlanta, it never stops, ever. We stopped lately. So this business could get a little tense. As grounded as you are, I bet you've been in some tense situations. What's your advice about that? Or give us a story, even better.
You know what? I think take a deep breath. So many people react and want to sort of just pause and listen and not react. I think that you really have to listen to what other people have to say, digest it, and then think about a responsible, smart, counter, rather than to just kind of fire back and forth. I think so many people shoot from the hip, and I do. I mean, my gut is very good, and I do shoot from the hip sometimes, but I think in those tense situations, you really have to kind of pause. And I always say that in negotiating as well. Like, when you present an offer, don't follow it up with blah, 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 blah. Just present the offer and let the other person sit and react, rather than try and, go through to try and oversell yourself. But yeah, I mean, I think you were starting to say as far as price point, whether it makes it, I mean, I treat every customer, and I think people are often surprised, like, you're not going to want to handle my $1 million listing, right? And I take quality listings and will deal with buyers at any price point, as long as, I feel that they're quality and they're good people. I mean, I've had moments where I've had $1 million listing and a $60 million listing and everything in between. So I treat everyone the same way, and you never know. I mean, even sometimes I'll get a call for a 2-week rental, and it's a lot of work for a 2-week rental, but you don't know what that person might turn into, or who they might refer you, or, and if they're coming from a good place and they're referred from somebody else, that's even more so a reason to really service them in the best way possible.
Exactly. Just collective, cohesive working.
I have also a great team now, so I'm very lucky. I mean, I don't have a big team. I don't want to have a big team, but I have an assistant who's been with me for 6 or 7 years. He's awesome. He does most of the rentals now because he's so good at it. And I have another junior partner who's, been in the business and been with me now for a few years, and she's great and very good with people also. And we've known each other a long time. So I'm very lucky because I'm surrounded. I have a great manager. I have a great marketing team in my office. I think surrounding yourself with good people is key.
So let's talk about that for a minute, though. And your team, or kind of your infrastructure of what supports your level of business is, you've got an assistant who also does rentals. So it's basically he assists you, and as you have rentals come in, that's something he can also manage to keep it off for lack of a better way of saying it, keep it off your plate or make sure it's handled in your busy schedule.
Yes.
You've got a junior partner who also probably helps take and carry. Is that someone who does their own deals or helps carry and support yours?
She actually does her own deals as well. And then she does a lot of my open houses, and, she'll work with buyers that, if I can't, if I don't have the time that, if it's a new person, maybe I'll we'll work on it together. So does my assistant works with buyers also. They're both just great. I mean, like I said, I don't have a team and I don't really want that, but I'm very hands-on, and I'm like a self-diagnosed control freak because I like things. I like to do things myself. I like to do it the way I want it done, but I really trust the two people that work with me. So, it's a really good, healthy setup, I think, right now.
Now you talked about it. Who's manager?
You froze again. I talked about what you said?
Okay, so you talked about, so edit 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you talked about a manager on the team. Is that, so do you have someone that manages you, your team, or is that your broker? No,
that's like my office manager. So
okay.
He manages the whole office, and he actually he was a real estate attorney, and he's been in,
oh wow,
he's been a manager of real estate offices for several years, and he's just so great. I mean, whenever we get into a pickle, you can pick up the phone and call him, and he just is very grounding and very calm and very knowledgeable. And so we're lucky that Sotheby's, hires great leaders.
Exactly. Well, it's a great point though, because I think a lot of agents are like, okay, this is my deal, this is my team, but don't forget the broker and the manager and who manages everything is kind of the foundation of everything of your business.
Crucial. And we have a great office. So I mean, we have a marketing coordinator who's amazing, and we have a head admin who's just great. She processes all the checks and does all of our agreements. So the infrastructure within the office is there. I don't really need to have my own people for that stuff.
Exactly. So you basically are an agent with 2 other agents in support, and you've got an office that really, when it comes to admin, the agents who support, I'm sure, especially your assistant, is behind that. Plus you've got your office at the Sotheby's brokerage.
Right.
As far as your marketing materials go, that's all the marketing department and your marketing team through Sotheby's.
Yes, and also my assistant's very good at that as well. So he produces a lot of our marketing as well. So between the office, marketing coordinator and my assistant, it all is just very seamless.
So he's kind of your marketing, listing, transaction lead or guy. He manages that for you and feeds it out to the office. Plus he helps with the rentals.
Yes.
That's a nice setup. So
and he does it all at this point. He's very good, and we bounce stuff off each other, and he'll always call me if he has a question. So we work really well together. And I leave him alone. I don't micromanage him. That's just not who I am. So, and he doesn't need to be micromanaged. So
I love it. You're like, I'm a control freak, but I don't micromanage. Well, I am too, and I do micromanage.
Yeah.
But at least I know it.
No, I try not to.
That didn't come out right. But
I can only, keep up with so much.
I didn't mean it like that. I just about to if anybody replays this, that did not come out right. But I get it. So anyway, okay, but I've got 2 last things. I want to talk to you about listing appointments for a minute, but I also have the final 3, and I know we've got about 10. I've got longer, but I think you may need to stop in 10 minutes. So just giving you a heads up. Number 1, I haven't talked about this enough lately with some of our recent guests, and they've got great advice, but what is, like, do you have a quote formal listing presentation appointment, or what does it look like when somebody calls you to list their house?
I have to be honest, most of the time when I go on a listing appointment, it's either because of a referral, or like recently I sold a property in the neighborhood and the neighbor called me. And so it was almost as if they knew they liked me before I got there. And I am fairly informal, to be honest, with my listing presentations. If it's a big listing and if I know I'm up against other, a lot of other brokers, I'm more formal, and I'll bring in, the team, as far as, the leaders, my manager, that kind of thing. But most of the time my listing appointments are very informal, and it's more about a rapport and, are we going to work well together? I think being with the Sotheby's brand makes it very easy in a way, because, it's so easy to sell the brand. And then if we like each other and we hit it off, and they, and they want to use me, it's a very natural thing. It's not formal.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who hasn't, or even to somebody who has, what do you find the most important thing is when you're beginning that relationship, whether it's winning the listing or the relationship with the seller?
Well, I think also my track record comes into play a lot. And so, again, like that example I just used, because I had sold a property in the neighborhood, and because I've done so much business over the years, and have, longevity, and I've been at it a long time, and I know all the players, and, I think that sort of speaks volumes. So that's already there when I show up for a listing.
Exactly. What did you do when it didn't? Before you had that?
That was hard. I mean, I really had to prove myself, and that was not easy. And I'm sure there were, going back a long time, but I'm sure there were listings that I didn't win, because I wasn't,
exactly,
the top broker at the time. But, I've been lucky now, because in a way, I feel, I don't want to downplay it, but I feel like listings kind of fall in my lap at this point, and I'm very lucky and grateful for that.
Well, another thing I would bet you take for granted is that listening to you in this interview, everything that you do is about listening to people. Don't react, build rapport. Relationships are huge, and you've got one hell of a work ethic. Right. So it's in the repeat activity of being that agent that is, you don't just show up at a listing and get it. You show up and you listen and you build rapport, and you do have a track record, but you know how to communicate it and speak to it as it relates to the person that's hiring you at the moment.
Absolutely.
That's what I heard anyway. So I like just pulling it out. That's all.
I love it.
Last thing, 3 questions. So we've got 5 minutes. So let's see if we can get this done. Number 1, what do you think has been your biggest resource in being such a successful agent? A top agent in a highly competitive market, the Hamptons, by the way.
I'll go back to the brand. I think the Sotheby's brand has been huge for me, and sometimes probably more than I even realize, because I don't know any different, because I've been with Sotheby's for so long. But I think I'm lucky, because I just have this great brand behind me. So if I need something, I can reach out to our chief marketing officer, who is a friend of mine. I can reach out to the president of the company, who I've known for years. I can talk to my manager, who I've known for a long, long, long time. I can speak to my colleagues who I've worked with for 17, 18 years, and we all sort of bounce things off of each other. So the resources are they run deep.
Yeah. So next question. What would you say is a book that you've read that's changed your career, or that you highly recommend we read? Me and everybody listening.
I don't know if it's changed my career, but I love Jack Cotton. I think he's just really great. I love his way, and I think he's really smart, and I love listening to him speak. So I think he's probably, obviously he's real estate focused, and there are other books that are not, that certainly are inspiring, but I think Jack's a great guy.
What's your biggest takeaway from his book?
He's very pragmatic in the way he approaches things, and I like that. I think he's, and he obviously also has a track record, and I sort of relate to him, I think. And we're in similar markets. I mean, he's on the Cape, and it's
Cape Cod, yeah.
It's a resort
yeah.
market. And I don't know, I think I just relate to him well. And I think he's also he's very normal. He doesn't have this huge ego. He's not, he's just a good person.
Yeah, he is. And very clever. I like talking to him. He's actually been on the show, everybody, I think 2 or 3 times, but we'll see if we can reference some of his shows. Okay, the last question. If everything from this conversation is forgotten and what we remember one thing, what would that one thing be? What would you hope we take away from this conversation?
About me?
Just anything. This business, advice.
I just think people need to, be grateful for what they, have, and work hard and be smart and be honest.
Great advice. Thank you. Dana, good to see you. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully we'll see each other in person soon.
We will, actually, in a few months, if not sooner, in LA. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Enjoy the summer.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf